Breaking Bad vs Better Call Saul will, I think, be a debate for years to come, and are a perfect example of a prequel slash epilogue working together with a sequel. So in this video, I want to talk about what's better. Better Call Saul vs Breaking Bad. First off, let's compare the protagonists. Now, Walter White is one of the greatest characters in TV history, and has one of the best written character arcs in the medium. And the hints from the very first episode that Walter is already in some way Heisenberg is genius. From letting out his aggression, his dominance over Skylar, and his manipulation of Jesse are all there in the first episode of the show.
And I know the chemistry. I'm thinking maybe you and I could partner up.
This is incredibly enhanced by the performance from Bryan Cranston, which is just masterful. Now, I'm no acting expert, but you are totally immersed in this acting from Bryan. The mannerisms, the body language, this shot where you see Walt trying to intimidate Saul's assistant, to no avail. However, you can see why it would work. Another thing that adds to this is the fact Bryan Cranston was seen just as a comedic actor, mostly due to his performance, which is great in its own right, on the show Malcolm in the Middle.
I need someone to take the fall.
Oh my God!
What did you do?
I can't tell you. Yes or no, no questions asked.
Oh my God!
And so, thus, this was quite a big risk for Cranston to take, and it did of course pay off in droves, and in some ways revitalised Cranston's career, with roles in Drive, Godzilla and many other films, all because how good he was in the role, which I think is rivaled only by the masterful performance from the late great James Gandolfini as Tony Soprano. And as the show's protagonists, we see the depths at which Walter is able to sink to poisoning a child, bringing a bomb into hospital, allowing Jesse to become a slave, all show how far Walter has sunk, even if this was just, in some ways, always bound to happen.
I was there. And I watched her die. I watched her overdose.
And then there's Saul Goodman. Now, Saul is a strange. In fact, in Breaking Bad, he is somewhat shown to be the comedic relief for the show, and is shown as never really being a serious guy, always plotting and scheming. And as a comedic performance, it's really well done, and his manipulation of other people to benefit him, and also his fear is shown quite well. However, there are hints at a much more complex character, like his mention of Lalo.
Lalo didn't send you? No, Lalo? Who? Oh, thank God. Oh, Christ.
And he's only really ever serious the first time when him and Walter are in Ed's basement, where he is shown to respect Walter in some way, even offering a handshake. Of course, this all changes in Better Call Saul with the introduction of Gene Takovich, which is Saul's new personality, which we see how depressed Saul has become, and the series changes how we see Jimmy. He really is in some ways worse than Walt, and this is massively helped by the improved performance of Bob Odenkirk, who is able to show range.
That's weird.
You can't conceive of what I'm capable of. I'm so far beyond you. I'm like a god in human clothing. Lightning bolts shoot from my fingertip.
And in the show, we were able to see a different side of Saul, in which we get a fantastic scene when he talks to Mike, and when we realise it was Saul who really wanted to work with Walter, as he saw an opportunity to make money and took it. And the show really establishes that Saul was behind everything in some way, and that Walt was this kind of destructive force that in some ways saved Saul and in some ways made him even worse. Now, this is tough, as I think Saul was a better character, largely due to the fact he is given more time to develop. Walter is great and fantastic, however Saul is able to be fleshed out more, and his personality is 100% clear in all of his shades of grey. So I think Saul is a better character, but only just. Now onto the villains. Now, Breaking Bad's villains are all unique in some way. Tuco is quite intense and shows Walter and the audience how messed up and cruel a villain and a person can be. Just take Tuco's beating down of his friends. And he acts to show Walt in a sense how tough and mentally depraved you have to be in order to survive in the drug trade, and is a great introduction and villain for the series. This is improved upon by the introduction of Gustavo Fring, and just from his intro alone you know how great of a villain he really is.
I don't think we're alike at all, Mr. White.
Now, while very simple, the drop from a smile to a almost no reaction, is very effective writing and acting, and is a much more different type of villain compared to Tuchel, less aggressive but smarter. And Gus as a villain is helped massively by that incredible performance from Giancarlo, who really is effective in the role. His manner of speech, even his eyes are very effective in intimidating people. The blank stare that even today, and people in real life, when they see him, are kind of afraid of him. A massive thing that makes him more effective is him paralleling Walter. Both very intelligent, both live double lives, both deep in the meth business. However, Gus is a more refined, better version of Walter. A better businessman, as he is literally the most successful drug empire in American history. However, due to the fact he lives this double life, he's underestimated the insane lengths that Walter was willing to go to kill him. And then there's Todd, who is a very great example of a villain you're made to hate. The childlike performance from Jesse Plemons is fantastic. His lack of humanity is made very evident, of course him killing Drew Sharp, which is one of the most shocking scenes in the show, and makes Todd a very effective villain. Also the fact he seems to think he's friends with Jesse is a very interesting and disturbing route to take his character. And when he is finally killed, it's very satisfying, which are very quite different from Breaking Bad. First there's Chuck. Chuck is one of the reasons Saul is the way he is. His dedication to the law, making him almost inhumane. He seemed to despise Jimmy, constantly making his life hard, despite Jimmy trying to help him. This is made very evident in his centenary speech.
But not our Jimmy. Couldn't be precious Jimmy. Stealing them blind. And he gets to be a lawyer? What a sick joke.
Now, despite being a cruel person, Chuck is shown in the finale did actually like Jimmy. He just wanted him to change and become a better person. And overall, it's quite an interesting villain for the universe, as unlike Breaking Bad, he's not a very physically intimidating villain or anything like that. However, his arrogance and need for structure and order lead to his death, which I think is a very unique character for the show. Now on to probably the show's most well-liked villain, Lalo. Now he's a very interesting character, as I'm just his character, he's almost a perfect villain. His evil smile, his carelessness over killing people, which he finds just like a normal everyday thing, and the incredible performance from Tony Dalton. How he increases the tension whenever he's on screen due to his unpredictable nature.
No need to.
Oh my God!
He really makes you fear for the character's life. However, they do make it quite obvious that he's going to die. Now of course, he is a bad guy in a prequel. Of course he's going to die. However, after surviving when Natural betrays him, they make it seem as though he's basically unbeatable, like a Terminator. And thus when he does die, it did leave some people to be kind of angry due to the anticlimactic nature. However, I do quite like his death, as it's the only time, besides Gus's death, we see Gus's fear, and him laughing, which is a very, very well acted scene. Now, overall, I believe that Breaking Bad has the better villains. While Lalo and Chuck are great, Breaking Bad's villains are, at least to me, much more iconic and fit Breaking Bad so well. And every time they're on screen, there is this fear. Now that's the end of the structured part of the video. Now I'm going to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of both shows. Now in Breaking Bad's case, it's kind of had the problem that Better Call Saul didn't have, in that it had to establish itself first. Well, you can clearly see there's a nude woman in the pilot, which doesn't happen again. Even the tone of the show, much more music and some stuff that doesn't really come back. However, despite that, nothing horrible or insulting happens, and it sets up the show very, very well. However, unlike Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul knew it would not get cancelled and knew it would continue. It was allowed to take its time, slow pace, which it used to its advantage. They both introduced new characters and to go for something different than Breaking Bad. Much more of a kind of legal drama that involves some of the characters from Breaking Bad. Now, because it's a couple of years after the ending of Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul is much more streamlined show that 1000% knew what it was going for, and thus the style of the show is much more obvious, with a clear visual style, with various shots, and I would say from a technical stance, is a much more creative in its filmmaking than Breaking Bad. Take for example this scene. Jimmy is in the meeting. It starts off with this shot of a damaged bin, and the shot is shot very low, almost on the ground. And Jimmy then has the meeting where it's shot from a high angle, suggesting that Jimmy's spirits and confidence is high. However, the meeting does not go as planned, and the camera slowly positions slower, and once Jimmy comes back down, suggesting that this is a common thing that happens quite a lot. Also, the advantage Better Call Saul has, I think it's much better written female characters, such as Kim, of course being the standout. Even a character like Sherry.
But you're losing money.
We'll see. It'll be fine.
The advantage that Breaking Bad has is the fact it's the original show. It's where we first saw these characters and meet them. We're introduced to them. It's where we got to love Jesse and Saul and Mike. It's where we got to fear Gus and Tuco. It's where we first got mention of these characters, Nacho and Lalo. So it's always going to have the advantage. Also, I think the pace of Breaking Bad really helps it, especially in the later seasons. A quite fast paced show with multiple events in each episode. While on Better Call Saul, it's a big event of basically anything that happens, like a murder would be massive, or even just a fight or an argument. Now, I would say personally, Better Call Saul overall is a much more consistent show. In each of its seasons, each episode is very well written and has a big reveal or event in the finale. Meanwhile, I think Breaking Bad has the higher peaks and highs, as I don't think any Better Call Saul episode reaches the heights of Ozymandias, well, very obviously, and even take an episode, for example, like Face Off. And I think Breaking Bad's relationship of Jesse and Walter is one of the best in TV. And I think just slightly better than Jimmy and Kim, which of course is great in its own right. It's full of twistship with Nacho. Also, because of the nature of the show, it's just a lot more exciting as a show, more action, more intense scenes, and to some extent more heartbreaking moments. Now, this isn't to discredit Better Call Saul at all, but I do feel that Breaking Bad just has a slight edge over Better Call Saul,